Tinakai, Namaste. Welcome to our show for tonight. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. As promised, tonight our guest is Assistant Minister for Women, Children and Social Protection, Sashi Kiran. Sashi, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and coming on the show. You've been quite busy being the Assistant Minister. A lot to do there in those portfolios with the Minister for Women, Children and Social Protection, but also holding the position of Chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee and Co-Chair of the Termites Task Force, amongst other things. A lot of questions have come in. Thank you very much. And again, I will attempt to ask all the questions that you have sent through. As part of the show, we give you a chance to send in your questions, and for accountability and transparency, it's put to the guest, and we try to get your responses as much as possible. Going to the first question, Sashi. Increasing cases of senior citizens committing suicide in our country. More than 20 have committed suicide this year. What seems to be the cause of these increasing cases?
Thank you, Vijay. A very good evening to you and good evening to listeners. Yes, that is a huge worry. I was able to get some data out. We've had 20 and 3 attempted suicides by seniors above 60 this year in particular. And there are many reasons. One of them we find is neglect. Many of the older persons who are dying or trying to do self-harm are living alone, have health issues, they don't have family around, and they are in depression. We have also talked to some of the counseling agencies who have been working with them, and they find that anxiety, health conditions are some of the reasons. But I think the lack of care is a big concern right now.
That is a concern. Concerns are being raised on the growing lack of care and even respect for elderly citizens. What are your thoughts on this?
There is a lot that needs to be done. Somewhere along the line we forgot to teach our children kindness and compassion, and I think as people are looking for brighter life and moving to cities or abroad, we are leaving our elders behind, and a lot can be done in a very short because in Fiji, for people who are leaving and going abroad, they can afford aged care here. It's very affordable to have somebody to live in, to look after their elders. But we also have to think through how our society has broken down. Now when you go to a village funeral or a village event, people do not come in numbers like they used to. So that sense of community has been beginning to break down.
It's also, people are saying, going back to the basics. The government cannot do everything alone, but again, the issue of the education system, the traditional systems, what are some of the plans? No doubt Cabinet and government as a whole is trying to come up with something, because this is really starting to show based on the statistics and what we're seeing on the ground.
Well, we have in the National Development Plan, we're talking about aged care, but government will talk more about the home care. We are working on how do we do community care, because the cases you see are coming from Lambasa, from Reki, from Singatoka in the recent times. I've reached out to counseling agencies and advisory counselors to see how do we do some pilot projects. In Ra, we've talking to some advisory counselors, and they know where the neglected older people are, to see how do we actually know who they are, where they are, and how do we get village health nurses to visit them. And Power Pacific is an organization I'm talking to. How do we actually work on visitation? But how do we develop community care? Some of them who are mobile and are getting bus fare allowance could potentially come once a week or once a month to a place like Bar Senior Citizen Center. In Lambasa, we're working on a daycare service, so that people can come and interact and socialize. But within the communities, we're talking to, requesting organizations like the Mandalis in the villages, mothers clubs, church organizations. How do they actually make an effort to look at the vulnerable, whether they're people living with disabilities or older people, and do some visitation to support the families? These things used to be there. We grew up with our older people having, making sure that the groups and Mandalis and all used to go and visit them. Some of these things have to be brought back, because we are going into a period where the greater extended families have collapsed and many of these older people are living alone. So we collectively as a community all of us need to look at it, and how do we look after our seniors.
And no doubt our younger generation needs to maybe have a whole lot of education in relation to care and respect for the elders.
I think we are all born with kindness and compassion. Somewhere maybe in our parenting, in the early life, we are neglecting some of these things. Because when we are always on gaming and gadgets, we're not teaching our children kindness and compassion. And that is something that schools and policies, it's not going to fix. It has to come from home, the communities, the villages, taking our children to these sorts of places where they interact with elders, interact with people living with disabilities. And that's something the parent and the communities will have to build, where children understand. Because we all will age. And those children will also age. Unless we start educating those processes of looking after not only our older persons, but all the vulnerable, we are losing the plot as a Fiji that's known for love and compassion.
A very worrying statistics there. 20 senior citizens have taken their own lives this year so far, and 3 have attempted to commit suicide. As we speak, police have confirmed an 80-year-old Lautoka man is currently in critical condition in hospital after he attempted to commit suicide a few days ago.
I must say, Vijay, there are more men.
And that is worrying in terms of, and the main issue seems to be neglect, people just being left on their own. And these are not people living on the streets. These are people who are actually living in homes and left by their families. Now, there's rising cases of people with mental health issues. Sashi, our only psychiatric hospital, St. Giles Hospital, is full. We need our facilities upgraded. There are mentally challenged people on the streets. What is being done about it?
There's a lot that is, so you will hear that Minister for Health has been talking about setting up or extending or supporting the St. Giles facility. But the problem is growing at a rate which just facilities will not be able to fix. A lot of that is drug abuse. We are seeing people with mental challenges on the streets with drug abuse. I have been visiting homes, so you'll know Dolomani home in Lautoka takes in people from the streets. So these are younger people. They have a shelter where like 29 people come and sleep in. But they also have taken in people from seniors from the streets, but another 40, 50 people there. And they are finding that more and more people are going through the mental challenges. Some of them do have skills. So places like Dolomani are actually utilizing the skills and trying to support them, making sure they take their medications. Many of these people that we find on the streets, they go off medication or they're not getting regular support. And that's when they become much more aggressive. Again, like you talked about the elder care, family members will have to take responsibility. And you will find in all our aged care homes, 90% of people in our aged care homes across the country are people living with disabilities, and most of them with mental issues. And people throw them out. You know, community members or family members are not appreciating or supporting them because they have those challenges. Some born with it, but now induced by drugs. So I think as much as government is trying to work at it, it's again a whole of community approach. We need to look after our people that they don't get into drugs and get supported at the right time.
High usage of hard drugs is a big concern. We've seen reports yesterday in relation to Fiji now being a regional hub for the wrong reasons, drug trafficking and even organized crime, and even links to supply of drugs coming right from Mexico and connections to Chinese national, and even saying that meth labs are being constructed here. So all worrying issues. And then we've got reports of Bluetoothing, chemsex, people sharing needles, a high level of HIV cases. The cases are hitting the roof, and people now starting to steal from their own to try to continue with the habit. What is the plan on demand reduction, supply reduction, and harm reduction?
Well, Narcotics Bureau would be able to tell you that in detail because there's a plan and there's work happening in that particular area. I will just speak very briefly about it. Do you remember when Honorable PO was abused in Parliament by a former Prime Minister. And if you remember, the issue that he had raised was drugs. So drug has been in the country for decades, probably. And now the government is committed to making sure all of it comes out. So you are visibly seeing it, something that we had put a lid on up till now. And because police are actively searching, you are hearing more reports. And for the longest time, since we haven't talked about it, it has really manifested and has found places in villages, in children, everywhere. We're trying to see how do we engage children and youth in more creative activities in the absence of activities, and how do we create awareness and education on drug addiction. So in Suva, we'll find from when we started looking at people loitering in Suva, a lot of them are doing drugs and they're coming from squatters around them. So we went to Jitu estate and are working in that community. There has not been real drug awareness, and they have asked for it. They know where their children are at night taking drugs, and they're asking, what do we do to reduce? So communities are concerned, parents are concerned. And we're trying to create activities first for drug de-addiction, making sure the children get the support they need, youth, but also they're getting them into jobs, them understanding the issues. I was with Wheelbarrow Boys in Nandi yesterday, and they have been on the streets, they're in and out of streets, and they admitted that the shock of seeing their own die has really want them to change.
And dying from overdose?
That's what they said.
Drug overdose.
In last 2 months, they said 8 people they know.
8 wheelbarrow boys who mainly live on the streets?
That's what they said. The people they know who've been living with them on the streets have died.
So these are street kids, not necessarily all wheelbarrow boys?
Yeah, the people who live on streets. Now, some people who live on streets don't, they also have homes. Huh? So they come roam the streets, but they do go back home. And so I asked how the burial was done and all, and they said, well, their families buried them. So they did have families. And that's what we're finding in Suva. People have families, but they come and live on streets. And when convenient, they go back home. So they said the shock of losing people like that. And they talk about how youth when they get overdose, they die very quickly. And when you talk to them about overdose, they say sometimes you don't realize how people overdose, or they may be mixing drugs. But the men I spoke with, they said that shock has made them want to not carry on with their life. So hopefully the education and sharing the case studies will make the people and the parents and the families realize we need a major shift. And as a community, we can start reworking on rehabilitation and support for them.
So you're saying that these 8 died in the last 2 months?
That's what they said, 2 months.
And there are also reports and information coming through. There's a lot of overdose going on in the country, which is going unreported.
Yes, I guess hospitals would know the cause of death, which could be organ failure, which could be kidney failure. There was a case where somebody went immediately blind, apparently, and then had organ failure. So we are hearing those reports, but we don't know how many. You may know that 2 people were buried, and church had raised it in Suva, and both of them had died from overdose. I guess it hasn't really hit us as a nation, and we haven't started talking about it. But that does shock a family and a community to say, no, we don't want our children to go through this, and hopefully are being more open to rehab.
We know there's more mentally challenged people on the streets. People are raising concerns about that, and some may be addicts, and some, negative effects have kicked in. And then on top of that, we've got people who just are living on the streets, some who are coming on the streets in the day, going home at night. What is being done to address this issue?
So when we do see more people who are mentally unstable on the street, we do, our officers work with St. Giles to try and make sure they get treated. Many of them are on treatment, but they don't take it. So then, and sometimes they're very aggressive, but then between police, welfare officers and St. Giles, they try and make sure they go and get treated. We do have a problem. I remember when we came into the government, there were more than 35 people treated at St. Giles whose family didn't want them. These guys are treated. They could go back to their families, but the families don't want them. So then there is a real problem of you can treat people, and if they have nowhere to go, then they end up on streets again. So it's a vicious cycle. And for those who are coming to the streets from the community, we are going into those communities now. With Jitu in particular, we have different ministries working together. Ministry for Local Government is doing surveys. We're trying to get employment. We've had private sector involvement in some of these communities where we're actually actively trying to help the young people get the CVs in, and a couple of dozen have been employed in the last couple of weeks, for example. Now, you remember in the past, if we didn't have a job, our parents or our elders will actually help us with CV, will take us, somewhere to do the interview. Now, there's no one place you can find jobs. If you follow Marriott page, then you will see their ad. So many people don't know where to find jobs and how to actually apply. So we are actually actively as a government helping youth get organized, working with Ministry of Youth and getting them through some empowerment training programs and then placing them in jobs. This started last year, but we've been really intensified it in the last couple of months.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break. About 20 years ago, we had a major drug bust, and you would remember, you would have been part of the operations at Laudala Beach. A lot of people in Fiji did not know what was methamphetamine. And what we are picking up on, people are saying it's readily available. Just the issue in relation to General Secretary, was that a tactical move that he ejected himself from Parliament?
Personally, it's unfortunate.
How are you dealing with those police officers who may be allegedly involved in this?
No one is above the law.
We assure you that we will be having police officers around.
As a result of that bad policy, by the end of this month, we would have lost close to about $70 million in government revenue.
Bula Vinaka, I am Vijay Narayan. This is Fiji Village Straight Talk.
Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan. Watch it live on the Fiji Village Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Wait, where am I?
Oh, you died, bro.
I'm dead? But why?
But that's what happens when you change your playlist when you're driving?
Crashed.
What? No, this can't be happening. I had so much left to do in life. All I do is stare at my phone because I'm Gen Z and we're all antisocial.
Oh.
And I wish I did so
Poor guy.
much. But by the way, do you guys have Wi-Fi up here?
This is why you should have listened to F96 Drive. Shouldn't have been playing that music.
And you just drive.
No! I can't believe this is happening. It wasn't
When you're
even
done,
my car and I didn't have
Hell is
car
that way,
insurance.
eh?
Wait, what?
Bring it back, bring it back, bring it back.
क्या आप भी परेशान हैं?
अच्छी करता है यार, तुम लोग का समझ में नहीं आए। अंधार में रहेगा, कट जाएगा जगह, कौन जाएगा भरी? जाएगा भरो।
क्या आपकी भी लाइफ में ऐसी ही टेंशन है? आपकी परेशानी को कम करने के लिए आ रहा हूँ मैं बहुत ही जल्द आपको हंसाने के लिए। रेडियो सरगम और रेडियो सरगम फेसबुक पेज पर बहुत ही जल्द वहीं पर मिलेंगे। हेलो, अरे यार,
watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight is the Assistant Minister for Women, Children and Social Protection, Sashi Kiran, who is also the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. And that's why I will ask some specific questions. A lot of questions have come through from you as well, and also from a current sitting parliamentarian who would send questions. I will also ask about that. First of all, explain the Truth and Reconciliation process going forward now.
Okay. So you are aware that last year in Parliament we moved a motion, and then from that motion, when it was passed, the Cabinet set up a committee to help in the establishment. That means we had to do a piece of law that will allow the government to establish the commission, right? So we so far have just been doing the consultation to draft that law, that bill. That bill has come into Parliament in the last sitting, and we are hoping that in the next sitting it will be second read and debated. Once that is passed, then it goes up to the President to appoint the commissioners, and then the commission will start its work.
It's a very clear explanation because the law has not come into effect. Just want to make that very clear. It is not an act at the moment, it's still a bill. The first reading was done in Parliament, and as the Assistant Minister has pointed out, the second reading expected to be done in the next Parliament sitting, and if the vote is taken and it's passed, then it becomes a law, and then the next process takes place. Now, a lot of people have sent messages about this, some supporting it, saying it's good for the country, time to move on and time to unite, while others are saying it is a waste of tax dollars, as there are more pressing issues like drugs, poverty, crime, water issues, health and education that need to be dealt with. What are your thoughts?
I think all those issues are being dealt with. There's budget allocation for health, water, all of that. Now let's think about drugs and poverty in particular. Why are people doing what they're doing right now? We as a nation have been traumatized for the last 40 years. And trauma, if you look at different research, impacts the community differently. Things like drug, the addiction, breakdown of families is something that happens when a community is traumatized. There's something called epigenetics. Our genetics begin to mutate with the environment we live in. If we live in environment of pain, fear, and trauma, it has an impact on us. So that should answer that unless we deal with the traumas of the past, which we still carry. People are carrying it. When we did the consultation, the young people said to us, we might not have seen it. In two places, young people said, we might not have seen it, but we live with it because our parents narrate it. We've seen our grandparents suffer. And the Youth Alliance actually reached out and made submissions saying, we want to be part of it because we know the whole of nation has been impacted. And if we don't know what has happened, we could be making the same mistake. So it's crucial that we look back and work on our healing, I think.
How inclusive will be the process? People are asking, what is the plan?
Well, the Commission will decide that, but we are prescribing that the Commission will have 5 commissioners. There'll be 1 chair that we're trying to get from overseas and have the different ethnic groups well represented. Then there'll be efforts made to make sure that there is a hearing process in all communities, with translation available, with sign language available, so that making sure that people living with disabilities are included and people of all ethnic groups can come and make their presentations and be heard in that commission, by the Commission.
The issue about healing, and no doubt there are different communities involved. If you look at it in 1987, when the current Prime Minister conducted the coup on May 14th, 1987, and a second coup in September 1987, the Indo-Fijian community felt targeted, and that it was clearly aimed at them. A lot of people left the country, and then we had another coup in 2000, of course led by George Speight, and that also people felt the way the Indo-Fijians were targeted, and with the then Prime Minister Mahendra Chaudhry being held hostage for 56 days in Parliament, and going on to another mutiny in 2000, November 2nd, 2000, and 2006 we had another coup. So no shortage of our own crisis in this country when it came to coups and even a mutiny, which was quite terrifying at the time. With all of this, the people are asking whether the process will be fair. And will you be able to answer that, knowing that there will be a commission that will be carrying out the work?
The commission will be independent commission appointed by the President. We will try our best to hope that the people who are who are involved in any way are not the commissioners, and there'll be an overseas chair. So we are hoping that we are committing that it'll be an independent process. And we're trying to create an environment where people can speak about 87, 2000, 2006 or the mutiny. And we will, as the Commission is doing its work, we will begin some awareness and education around the country to say that people become prepared and how to communicate, how to document. If we don't make this attempt, Vijay, what options do we have? So we will try our best to make sure that it is a commission appointed by President, it's independent, and people have their say.
The former Fiji First Minister and current opposition MP Elvik Maharaj has sent a few questions. His question, the first one, who has given the mandate to you, Sashi, to talk on behalf of the Indo-Fijian community and the victims with regards to truth and reconciliation?
I don't think I have spoken on behalf of the victims so far. I am at the moment appointed by the Cabinet to help in the drafting of the bill. That's what I have been doing it. But for his information in the rest of the countries, some of us were very actively involved in 2000. We were in the middle of it. When 2000 happened, we were in Suva. When the first range of crimes happened in Monoweni and Dawasamu, we were there. I was physically there in those spaces. I have held women who were raped. I have sat with men whose houses were burnt in Dawasamu. I traveled the country in Olosara when people were evicted, in Tavua, Wainikoro when there were mass evictions. I was there. When Driketi, the rebels left that elder couple's house, we were there, and I kept visiting until they died. I've seen a lot of pain of the people at that time. Why was I there? We were mobilizing food. We were mobilizing counseling. And many people overseas have been able to get asylum by documentation of that time. And I was doing those documentation. Why was I doing the documentation? To send to organizations, faith-based organizations like Sanatan Dharam and others saying, this community is affected, can you mobilize food through your mandlis and all? Most organizations and most people who were in power at that time failed our people. Because you remember, 2 months of hostage taking, and we were trying to help the families with hostage who were taken hostage, 2 months. And then it continued till November, where Indians were in a limbo and scared. We were mobilizing food, but the faith organizations and leaders at that time, everybody was scared and everybody said we don't have the mandate. So I think I can say that I've been very actively involved in 2000 in supporting people of that time. Set a friend while we were actually helping those who were evicted and moved to Nandi, to some of those places. They were the ones we were helping with the income generation. So I've lived in this space. I was also the one leading the peace process with Rewa, because as much as we've seen the pain, how long are we going to carry the pain? We have to pause, we have to reflect. But in no way so far I think I have represented Indian people, people who have suffered, except for in the Rewa peace process. And there I went and consulted the elders for 3 years, because when we started the Rewa peace process, Dr. Choniman Ravi said to me, the late former vice president, he said, who do you represent? And I went talking to many elders of Indian leaders here and abroad before starting the Rewa peace process. So I think I was given that to do that. But for now, in drafting the bill, I'm representing the government.
The other question is, why has your committee opted to leave Vorenge Bainimarama out of the equation, knowing his involvement in the 2000 and 2006 coup? Why is he still behind bars?
That's not our prerogative. Our committee is only involved in drafting the bill. That's all we are doing. And we have called for consultations. We had asked Fiji First as well, the people in opposition. We have presented former Fiji First. The entire opposition, we've taken the draft bill to them, to different political parties. We've called for submissions, and whatever submissions have come in is what is in the draft. We do not go behind bars to ask people, what do you want in the piece of legislation?
Will Bainimarama be involved in the process?
I hope so. When the commission is set up, anybody and everybody will have the chance to be able to come in front of the commission and be able to give the submission.
But it's his choice.
It is voluntary.
It is voluntary. So you cannot, there is nothing in the law that will summon people to appear before the commission.
In some cases it may, if their names are raised, then there may be cases where they're summoned.
So
But
he could be summoned
he could be summoned
to answer to things.
to answer to things.
The other issue is the opening up of the old wounds, as you know, people have been talking about that it's also creating a level of hate speech, and it's very concerning. How will you deal with that? Because a lot of things will be raw and fresh when they come out again. I can talk about a lot of things I went through, but you know, and it will be very raw and fresh, and the issues that come out, will it help in healing in the process?
I think it depends how we frame it. You're absolutely right. Every time we pause and we think back, it's painful. Some of us have seen so much, you just want to bleed. And people they've come when they came to talk about submission, they've wept openly. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be painful. But unless we deal with the pain that we're carrying, now when you talk about the pain, it's not something you talk about every day, but you've buried it. Hopefully, we create a space where we're able to talk it, look at it, which we haven't done so far, and allow ourselves to heal, which is important. We will create environment of, like I said, awareness and education to make sure that people feel safe. In the bill, there is a provision for witness protection. There is also provision for, so if somebody comes and gives a witness and they get trolled, or if there is hate speech regarding the process, people can be charged. The Commission has the powers to be able to refer those cases to the police for bullying online.
What about giving false information? If people come out, appear in front of the Commission, and what they give is false, how will that be dealt with?
That's again provided for in the bill. If there is false information, because it's not just going to be 5 people going around Commission, there'll be research team, there'll be legal team, there'll be translation team. So when information is given on oath, and if it is found to be lies, those people can be charged. It is a provision in the bill.
Now, the other question that Mr. Maharaj has asked is, has Sashi Kiran taken her committee to speak to the victims who were raped and still live in silence to date? And as an Indo-Fijian, how does she feel that George Speight has been pardoned and released while the person who ended the 2000 crisis is in prison?
We have gone and talked to the victims. You'd remember in the beginning we did some work in silence where we talked to people to see how they would feel coming into this space. So we have spoken with victims, and we've also have had some public engagements where people, especially in Davasamo and other areas, have come forward and spoken. Now, George Speight process is nothing to do with our process. It is a normal process through President and through Mercy Commission. And I don't think he's been pardoned. His sentence has been postponed, but he's not pardoned, so to speak. Now, with the former Prime Minister, he was charged and the court dealt with him on a particular charge. And that is for the courts to decide. It is not the time to use emotions, and only time will tell, who started, who ended. There's so many contradictory evidence. But he is being charged for a specific thing, and he is serving his sentence for a specific crime or incident. And I'm sure he has the same provision like George Speight has, where he can apply for pardon. There are processes available for that.
Now, George Speight, a lot of people are talking about him coming out. Will he be involved in the process? Has he come forward to say that he wants to be involved in the process?
I hope he will be. Like we said, it's voluntary. I have received messages that he is said that he would want to be involved, but I haven't spoken to him personally. And as far as George Speight is concerned, and everybody who's angry and upset and hurt, you'd remember, I don't think it's a reflection on George Speight, it's a reflection on us. tomorrow somebody else can come and do bad things. Are we going to continue to harbor hate and pain? And that's what hopefully TRC does for us by helping us release that pain. What he did or what he does, whether he apologizes or not, is not something that we have a control over. But we do have a control over how we want to live our lives and whether we want to let the narratives go and see how our children don't carry the narratives. We are very hopeful that not only George Speight, but all people who were involved in any way will have the chance to be able to come forward and explain why they did what they did. But we have to create a structure for that to happen. And our committee is just at the moment creating the structure, an enabling structure hopefully, where whether they're perpetrators or victims, they could come and face and engage with the communities and be able to share the truth.
Now for some incidents, as you said, people can be summoned.
Oh yes.
Just asking about George Speight, the communication that you've received, is it in a formal manner that he's looking at? Is it just at this point in time?
I have been talking to, just like I've been talking to victims, I've also talked to CRW soldiers. Some of them had come during some of the consultations. And some of them have said that they have met him and he is open to this process and he would like to be engaged at some point in time. I don't want to quote names, but it's just in conversations I've heard that. I haven't reached out to him myself. He hasn't reached out to us. And we'll just leave it at there for now.
And the military is doing its own process. At some point in time, will the military be taking part in this process under the new law?
I think one of the things that Commander had said to me when they had started the process, he said for National Truth and Reconciliation to work, it's important for us within the military to look at ourselves. So I'm really grateful that that process is happening and there's healing happening, because as we went around during consultations, a lot of people came and said the different things that military has done, whether it was 87 or 2000 or 2006. So I think a lot of people will be asking questions on the military. And I'm hoping once they've gone through their processes and healing, they will be able to come and confront some of the questions that will be raised. And just like the military commander has, hopefully the other institutions start doing the same, because people have raised issues about prisons, for example, or the police and their crimes they committed. And in each of our spaces, you know how some people, like 2000 was seen as an indigenous coup, 2006 was seen as an Indian coup. Most people in this country have sided with one coup or the other. There was no coup that can be justified. But all our hands are dirty in one way or the other. And I'm hoping that the military truth and their reconciliation process allows us to look within and see what do we need to do in each of our community to start talking and working on some of this reconciliation and healing work while the national process is being developed, so that we could all come having had a look within ourselves as well.
Just a final question on this truth and reconciliation before we take a break. A question about if somebody comes out and lays out everything, maybe as a perpetrator, what they've done, and they ask for forgiveness for what they've done, will they be taken to task legally for that?
No.
So they can go in front of the commission,
yes,
state what they've done, and what happens after that?
We are hoping that the reason we've created a frame this way is people come forward and speak. If they're going to be taken to task, nobody will come forward. So nobody will be taken to task by coming and telling the truth. There will be different processes. There'll be truth-telling processes, and then the processes where they may be encouraged to have ceremonies or apology ceremonies with the victims. So they will be truth-telling, and then they will be what are the steps that we need to do to actually do healing and then reconciliation. These are the steps. And the commission will decide on how they want to work on that.
So when is this process expected to happen after the law comes
Once the
into
law
effect?
comes into being, the commissioners will be appointed. They'll have 2-3 months preparatory time for research and investigations and setup. So we are hoping by early next year or after first quarter of next year, the commission will begin to roll their work.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
That sounds right. Okay, I got it. If I could turn back time If I could find a way.
As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left. Sick and tired of hearing all these people talk about what's the deal with this pop life and when is it gonna fade out? The sun is fading away.
If I could reach the stars,
Bum, 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 bum. I don't know the rest of the words.
I'd give them all to you.
As the June light turns to moonlight. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la la la. Loving you is all I ever need. Making love with you is all good.
I take back those words that hurt you, and you'd stay.
आप देख रहे हैं इसी संडास जो हमारे सुपरस्टार प्रश अभी आकर इस्तेमाल करेगा किसी वक्त अभी लो आ गया सुपरस्टार प्रश
Not following me
सर
again.
सर जनता जानना चाहते हैं सर अगर जनता जानना चाहते हैं सर अगर rumors true sir hopefully bye सर एक सर अब देख रहे हैं दफ्तर के स्टूडियो में हम बन चुके हैं जेसिका जी जेसिका जनता जानना चाहते हैं जेसिका जनता जानना चाहते हैं कि आप कौन सी मेकअप लगाते हैं
आज मैंने तो कोई मेकअप नहीं लगाया
लगता है लगा ले
How dare you DEA
तो आप देख रहे हैं यहाँ एसएन का गाड़ी पड़ा है काफी गर्जी है लेकिन एसएन साहब एसएन सर अमेरिका से आए हुए सर अमेरिका का जनता जानना चाहते हैं सर आप हमेशा काला चश्मा क्यों पहनते हैं सर
तो सफेद चश्मा कहाँ मिली सफेद चश्मा देखा कहीं तुम
तुकता क्या को है
Demis, sa mama na lima? Ebe kenapa? Gol. Gol.
Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Tonight our guest Sashi Kiran, Assistant Minister for Women, Children and Social Protection. The other main area that she's handling at the moment, she's also the co-chair for Termites Task Force. Now there's a lot of questions that came regarding the termite infestation issue, and of course some people who are unaffected would be thinking why I'll be asking so many questions, but it is a real issue. So, you know, and I even got some messages from places like Kandavu, whether they are safe, and questions about that. Some people have called in, sent in questions on how you are dealing with the issue of termites and which areas have been identified so far.
Okay, so you'd remember in our first national budget, government had set aside 3 million because we knew that was a problem, and we were set as a task force to see how this needs to be worked on. So that's what we've been working on. Termite has been here for more than a decade. What has happened is the Lotoka in particular, where it was first found and first exploded, the property prices have really dropped because majority of the houses are termite infested. So we thought to do Lotoka as a pilot. And we called in for people to report. It was slow in the beginning because people were not so keen. But then when biosecurity started assessing, then people realized. And some assistance has been given, but we realized as we started researching that you can keep rebuilding a house, but the colony lives underground. It lives under your house, And you can keep replacing timber, but they'll keep coming in even through the concrete. So it's very important for us to bait. We've been reaching out to Queensland, where this is a big problem, and this is the Asian subterranean termite, so it is a problem in most of Asian countries. And we've been trying to look at how do they deal with it. Baiting is one of the key areas, key ways they do it. In Australia, in Queensland, you can find bait available in like $50, $60. They can bait, and there's certain areas they can. There are places where they bait and they monitor the bait. So citizens are educated on how to look for termites and how to be able to bait it. So that's what we've been trying. It's taken us a long time. In the last 1 year, we've been working at it. And a tender had gone out last year. And the tender board does the processing of that. And a tender has gone out and approved now. So in Lautoka, we will do a pilot of 1,000 houses in terms of baiting.
So right now, as far as the termite infestation is concerned, which areas in Fiji are affected that you know of?
So Lautoka and Nandi. Lautoka is very widespread. Nandi is quite widespread, but not as big as Lautoka. Little bit of reports from Ba, little Tavua, and very little Rekireki for now. Singatoka, we still don't have too many reports. But Vanuatu in Lambasa and surrounding areas in Lambasa, we've had a lot of reports. And we've heard now about Nakasi as well. So these are the known, reported, but it may have it spread in other areas that we may not know.
So it started off in Lautoka.
Started off in Lautoka.
And because it wasn't addressed fully, we've got a big situation. There are questions about how was the tender awarded to the company dealing with the termite infestation. Was the company present on the day of the interview with the government, and did the tender board assess the company's certificate?
I cannot answer those because that goes through a government process of tender, and tender board does that. So we say we want these things tendered, and then tender board does it from there onwards. So tender board, however they did the process, we are then told who is successful and when the contracts are finalized. So we were told only a month ago whose contract was finalized, and now we are talking to them.
But you know that they are certified?
They are certified, their products are certified. Apparently they are one of the few who have actually got a Fiji termite bait registered in Fiji.
How many years guarantee will they give after finishing the termites treatment?
You cannot give a guarantee on termite treatment. What will happen is they'll bait a house and they will do 3 treatments as part of what the government is paying them to do. And they will be data collection. So there will be pictures and data from each entered in a portal which we all will have access to. So the government will have access and they'll have access where we can monitor this, how much damage has been done and when the colony is cleared. Now if you look at a house, we make clear infestation in that house, but the soil around it may still be infested, or there may be colonies living underground. So we are looking at a second phase also on how do you make sure that the surrounding areas are baited. And for that we are encouraging people to do baiting themselves. We'll be rolling out education process. And we're trying to make sure that baits are available in Fiji so readily and so cheaply that most people can afford the baiting. So initially it's the house baiting, and then we will be creating and rolling out education on baiting of the whole land area. Now in Queensland, you have to bait every year. I've been baiting my house in Lautoka for more than 5 years. You bait every year. You actually have it monitored every 3 months, 6 months. So it's not that a bait will come and it'll finish it, because you may bring termite from somewhere else. How is termite spread? People bring infested wood from other places. In Lautoka, I have seen when somebody removes the infested timber, they'll give it to somebody and say, please go and use it as a firewood. And then each time that infested timber travels, wherever the timber falls on the ground, the termite goes inside the ground. You may be able to bring a pot plant with termites in it, with soil infested. So, and termites don't spread very fast, but they do go up to 50 meters underground. So if there are colonies around your house, they could come and infest you. So we need to have this whole awareness and education that everybody has to take responsibility for baiting and monitoring their properties so their properties don't get damaged. So it's a long-term process.
Questions also being asked about how will the company prove that the termites have been fully treated in the timber? Do they have the machines, or what is the timeline as the Biosecurity Authority did the same dust method but could not finish that? How will this company finish this?
So this is not a dust method. We know the dust method doesn't work. This is actually baiting in the house and baiting in the ground. So what happens with the baiting is there is wood shavings put in a place where there may be a pathway for the termites with chemical in it. Once you see the termites are eating it, then a chemical is put in it. And that bait is taken by the termites to the colony down in the ground. And then the mother or the colony dies. So it is a process that will be monitored by biosecurity and overseen by biosecurity. But like I said, there will be data entered and monitored over the period of treatment.
How will they be giving the government the final result that all the termites have been fed and are dead? Will a certificate with a guarantee be provided?
You cannot, like I said, a house can be treated and there will be data and biosecurity checks on it. I know what they're asking. They're asking for there is a certain test equipment, ultra,
you can check on that?
Yes. So that will all be done to make sure that within that area there is no more termite after the treatment. But like I said, you cannot guarantee because it can still be infested again.
But those readings from the machine will be provided?
Will be available.
Has the government found the root cause of the termite infestation? As you said, it was before this government came in. But have you found the root cause and how you can stop it?
What we are told is that some obviously imports had come in, furniture imports had come in from Asia, which was infested, and that's where it began, but we don't know that for sure. But that raises a question about when we're trying to bring in imports that are not going through proper biosecurity, we run the risk of bringing in an infestation like that can destroy the nation. And this problem has been there long enough that so many houses have been damaged. So more than 10 years that is known. It could be there for more than 15 years. It's a big problem, and this government has just come into, in the last 1.5 years. So please bear with us as we're doing research and trying to deal with the problem.
So you've got Lautoka, you said
Nandi and
severely infested.
Severely.
Nandi, quite
Partly.
severely infested. Then you have parts of Tavua, Mba, and then Raki-Raki.
Parts of Raki-Raki, parts of Singatoka, yes.
Nakasi, how many reports have you received from Nakasi?
It's still small from what we hear, and those houses that have been reported are being treated and monitored. Now, in Raki-Raki, what was found was pallets, infested pallets from Lautoka were taken to Raki-Raki, and thankfully it was found and treated. So we don't know how many more infested pallets and timber and things are moving around. We'll only know when a house gets infested and we see the termites.
And then you've got very concerning reports from Vanuatu.
Vanuatu is a worry.
So it's what, which areas in Vanuatu?
It's the town, but surrounding areas as well. And we haven't fully analyzed the reports of how far it has gone yet.
So as far as this company is concerned, you believe that they're certified, they have the certified equipment, they have the certified baits, and that after the pilot project, what is the plan?
So after the pilot project, we are hoping that we can take this baiting throughout the country, wherever there's a need, but also avail products that every family can bait their own homes and create enough education that people can look for termites and be able to deal with it in their own homes. Because if you're looking at thousands of homes, whether it's biosecurity or particular company or government coffers, it's not easy for us to be able to deal with every house. We have to give some responsibility to community to do this.
And for thousands of homes, you wouldn't have the budget to
We don't have the budget.
cater for that anyway. Are there any specific regulations or building codes in place to prevent termite infestations?
Yes, so there are building codes in like Guam, where this was a big problem, and building codes are being revised, so we are hoping that that will all be looked into. So that's in process, and we are looking at other pieces of legislation. For example, the wooden timber, if you go to Lautoka, you'll see many warehouses have all these rotting pallets. And then people take those pallets. So we have to think about how we're disposing our timber, especially in red zones like Lautoka, and how it's moving out. So we're looking at different pieces of legislations on how do we manage the spread and make sure that it doesn't infest other areas.
There's an interesting comment you made about pot plants. People may just, all this time, a lot of people are just thinking untreated timber. You've had cases reported where it actually was transferred from pot plants, where people bought pot plants and the soil got infested and then the house got infested by termites?
We don't know that for sure, but we know that termites live in the soil. And we are told by biosecurity when soil is moved, dug and moved, when people take soil from here to there, they run the risk of taking it in the soil. So personally, I've shifted to Suva. I haven't brought my pot plants. Because you have to be conscious where they live. So timber infestation, and if they live in the soil, we have to be careful how we're moving soil. And biosecurity has warned us of that.
Will there be any benefit to providing relief packages? These are many questions coming from homeowners about relief packages and how the funds will be controlled.
So there are relief packages being planned. We did some for people below 50,000 and 30,775 homes in Lautoka, and they're being monitored by biosecurity. And same homes will be baited and same homes will be treated, so there'll be a full monitoring on that. But we do realize that we cannot provide assistance to every home that's been affected. So we were talking to other products, say Cane Growers Fund and others, to see how do we actually manage support for some of these people that they're able to rebuild homes. Because in Lambasa and some of those places where people are very like older people who don't have pension and are struggling with home rebuilding, we are very aware of those issues. But like I said, please bear with us as we're still working through some of these hurdles.
And people do not use treated timber, this question coming in because of high cost compared to normal timber. Mm-hmm. Can the government provide subsidies for the cost of treated timber?
Timber generally is supposed to be treated, that's available out there. You've heard in Parliament, we've talked about it, and we have reached out to all the companies. Actually, in Lautoka, we reached out to all the companies, the hardwares, to see, check that when people are buying, where are they buying treated timber? And I'm told that mostly it's treated timber that's sold. We're also encouraging people to use synthetic material, so the mesonite board and things are now coming in synthetic. And that's easier than, so termite doesn't get through some of that, or cement board. So we're looking at materials that could be made available for building that are not timber. So all of this is back-end work that is still being worked on, and hopefully in the next few months we can give you some clear answers.
Sashi, thank you very much as the Assistant Minister for Women, Children and Social Protection, and your role as the co-chair for Termites Task Force, and also as the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. Definitely a lot of questions have come through from the people. You have addressed, from your point of view, many things. And before we finish off the show, any comments to the people out there?
Well, thank you for this time. All I'll say to the people is, government is trying to work on policies and enabling environment. More than 40% of the budget, national budget, was there in terms of support for the people. And we encourage community engagement. How do we work with the community and agencies to deal with some of the problems we've talked about, whether it's aged care, whether we need people's commitment and organizations to come forward for truth and reconciliation, and we need people to be able to ensure that their homes are protected for termite. So we count on the people to help us make this country better. Thank you.
And that's your show for tonight. Until next week, have a great evening.
Good evening.